Hello and welcome to One on One. I'm Brother Barry Thompson. This is a show where you meet everyday people from all over the world who spent their lives walking in one or many directions, only to discover that they needed to find the right path to God. See what these people found in the Church of Christ or Iglesia Cristo that they couldn't find anywhere else. Today we're going one-on-one with Brother David Rivera, a young musician from Corpus Christi, Texas, who's using his musical talents to share his faith and to make a difference in people's lives. Let's take a look at his story.
I started playing music right around the age of 11, maybe 12.
For David Rivera, music has been opening doors for him for many years. Being accepted into the University of North Texas's School of Music was one of them. And it also gave him opportunities that many in his community could only dream about.
I have played at when Selena Quintanilla Perez passed away, who happens to be a very famous Tejano music star. I did play at her funeral, which was a tremendous deal. It was bunches and bunches of people, loads and loads of people would come out, and there happened to be a mariachi group which I had the honor of playing it with.
Door after door, David saw it all as being because of one reason.
I felt it was me that was opening up the doors. It was me that was making all these things happen for myself. It was the reason why I was getting paid is because I was a good musician. The reason why I was gigging so much because I was a good musician. The reason why I got into the college, 4 of us out of 180, because I was a good musician.
But without David knowing, music was about to open another door for him.
Yeah, so one of my buddies from my circle of friends, her name is Bernadette Soria, actually gave me a call. So little by little, she kept encouraging me, hey, why don't we go to church? Why don't we go to church? Let's go to church. Let's see how it goes. See if you like it. Well, me being who I was, I never really was into church. So out of the blue, she asked me once again, and I just said, sure, why not?
Up to this point, religion never played a big part in David's life.
I don't remember ever being dragged to go to church and saying, hey, today's Sunday, we got to go to church, or anything like that. Only thing I do know is I was baptized in the Catholic faith. I don't ever remember going to church or anything like that. My parents never forced it on me. In my life and in my mind, it was probably nothing. I didn't think about religion, didn't think I needed religion and had any time for religion.
In the studio today, we have Brother David Rivera. Brother David, thanks for joining us on the program. So you mentioned religion didn't really play a big role as far as you were concerned when you were growing up there.
Correct. Nobody ever forced me to go to church. It wasn't part of our day-to-day activities as far as church.
But how about your parents and the rest of your family?
Well, my parents when they were younger, they grew up in their certain religions. As far as myself, I never did, never pushed me to actually go to church.
Or were they Catholic?
My father was raised Catholic and my mother was raised Pentecostal.
So where did you get your morals from? Right and wrong. Was it from parents, basically, what they taught you?
Yes, it was. It was my mother and my father and my grandparents as well. My grandmothers, both of my grandmothers.
Your grandparents religious at all?
No, neither that I remembered.
So truly, religion didn't really have much of a force in your life.
Exactly. It wasn't something that they put on me.
But music had the force.
Music was what took over.
Tell me how you got into music.
The way music is that my brother was pretty much still in high school. He was learning guitar, and I happened to be in the same bedroom. He was getting better. I wanted to be better than him. That was how my guitar started. And then from there, it just really took off. I was able to play in middle school and high school and all throughout.
You fell in love with it.
I sure did.
And how did it progress? You went from elementary school
Yes, I actually started playing in classes in 6th grade, which is in middle school, and they actually had a classical guitar class. And that's where it just took off. From there, I went to high school and joined mariachi groups and classical guitar classes, and it just continued on from there.
What was that like, playing with those mariachi groups?
Oh, it's an amazing deal. I mean, I still do it every weekend, and that's pretty much a way to make some extra money every weekend.
Where do you guys play? Any and every place?
Any and every place that they want us to play. I've played at some of the far out ranches out in the country to in-city restaurants and anything else in between.
Now, you mentioned you played for that famous singer. Is it a Mexican singer? Her name is Selena?
And her name was Selena Quintanilla Perez.
Yeah, you played at her funeral.
At her funeral, at her burial.
Interesting. How did that come about?
Well, what happens is that if you have a death in the family, when they bury you, depending on what they were or how they lived, they actually would hire mariachi groups to go play at their burial. And as the casket is sitting there, you go ahead and you play your 5 or 6 songs, and you go ahead and play certain songs. And we happened to be hired for this particular event.
What did you think about God growing up? Who was God to you?
God to me growing up in my teen years I knew he was a creator. He did everything. But as far as going somewhere to actually worship God and actually worship Jesus Christ, it just wasn't in me. I figured that I could worship in my own way. That's the way I want. I knew he was there, and he'd forgive me for any of the things that I used to do, and it was okay.
What way did you think you could worship him back then?
Oh, just, saying a prayer every now and then, doing the sign of the cross from my parents' side, or going to church if I decided to play, because I did play at a lot of churches growing up. So it was, well, if I go to this service, it's okay. I'm included in the worship, so I'll be all right.
With music being a big part of Brother David's life, let's see how it brought him to different places and even exposed him to different religions.
I only went to church if they paid me, and a lot of other religions did pay, and they paid very well for us musicians to walk in there, play 3 or 4 songs, stay the service, and do our thing.
It was a mindset that David carried with him for many years, up until the day he accepted the invitation from Bernadette, an invitation that offered nothing he thought he needed.
I just didn't like it one bit. I thought what was going on as far as the sermon itself or the preaching was very blunt. I didn't like it, and it was a very, very hard lesson to swallow. The topic that was being taught at that time, on that day, was actually, basically in a nutshell, was that if you're not one of us, as far as Church of Christ, Iglesia de Cristo, you were not going to make it into heaven. The emotions when I heard that message was actually, I was very turned off, very angry, I just never wanted to walk into the church ever again, and I was just ready to wash my hands with it, wipe them dry, and just never come back ever again. On the way back to Denton, Texas, she asked me what I thought, and I told her I didn't like it, and it's just I was completely turned off. So my father actually always said to me, he said, if you don't like one thing, you never know until you try it again. Give it another shot, see what happens.
But his second encounter with the Church of Christ came in a very different form, one very familiar to David.
The resident minister at the time, unbeknownst to me, he was a musician himself. So we got to playing, we got to talking, we got to jamming, and I figured at the same time that if the resident minister at the time could be a musician and become friends with me, let's go ahead and give it another shot.
Music had just opened another door for David. But this time, he didn't have to perform to receive something in return. He just had to listen.
As far as the first thing that the resident minister taught, he really didn't force anything on me. It was more of, what questions do you have? And then I asked certain questions. And of course, the minister grabbed the Bible and said, here's the answer to the question. But the one lesson that really stuck in my mind, and that was an aha moment where the light bulb went off, was when we were talking about who was Jesus and why. What is he? Is he human? Is he spirit? Is he God? Is he something? What is he? And we went through the Bible, and plain and simple, it says it. He is flesh and bones, and it showed me the verse after verse after verse after verse, and I mean, it was there. It was there in plain English.
You now did you attend a Bible study first, or was it a worship service?
No, I actually went straight to a worship service.
And what was it like going to the worship service?
Well, as far as going to the worship service, it was pretty much welcoming as soon as you walked in the door. Everybody was very welcoming. They saw a new face, and everybody was calling me brother, and it was very welcoming. I liked it. And then as soon as we got there, after that, we split, and I didn't understand what was going on. I was walking by myself, and I didn't understand it. And as far as the lessons and what was going on, the lesson itself just wasn't my piece of cake.
Tell me what you were hearing, and how did you feel upon hearing that?
Well, the lesson at the time was it was, if you're not part of us as far as within our faith, you're not going to get into heaven. And to me at the time, as soon as I heard that, and that was like the beginning of the lesson, and as soon as I heard that, I just completely turned off my ears and just kind of just sat there. And I wasn't paying attention to anything. It just wasn't me. It hurt my feelings, apparently.
Now, I'm curious to know why you were so hurt by that, because up until that point in your life, religion really didn't mean that much to you. Why did it hurt? Was it something that you've never heard before, or it went against your personal beliefs about religion?
Yes, I believe it went against my personal beliefs.
Which
were, as long as I acknowledged that there was a Jesus and there was Christ, or there was God, I'd be okay. It's okay,
Which is what a lot of people think today.
Exactly.
And believe that as long as they acknowledge the existence of God and believe in his son, Jesus Christ, they're good to go. So that's what you had in mind up until that day that you stepped foot inside the chapel there for the Church of Christ.
Correct.
What made you decide that you want to actually listen to the teachings itself?
Well, the way we got started was when we started kind of just conversing with each other, talking about music, talking about different things, jams and all that stuff. And then we would hang out for a little bit, and he would take me and say, hey, you want to hear a couple things here? Let's let me teach you a little bit, and it was more of give and take. Give me this, hang out with me, and then I'll give you see what you think of our religion. Just kind of give and take kind of thing. And that's how it went for a while, until I decided that I wanted to become a Bible student. And that's how it took off from there.
What was it that made you decide? You had to have heard some things that made you curious to learn more. What was it that you heard?
It wasn't a particular thing that said, this is what I want, and oh man, I want it. It was more of, what about this? Here's my question. What do you think of it? And then he would go through the Bible, and here's the answer. And in a lot of the other religions that I had been with or associated with as far as my playing, they never gave me answers. It was because this is how we do it. This is how we've been doing it for...
Can you give us an example of maybe a question that you had?
One of the questions that I had was, one of the main questions that I had was, who was Jesus Christ? That was my main thing. Why did you
have that question?
Well, because I had asked that to some of my other, in the Catholic priests, and it was always, well, he's God. He's the God. He's both one, God and human. He's kind of morphing into God, but he is kind of Jesus, a human. He's both.
Yeah, it's like a dual nature.
But that doesn't make sense.
So why did that not sit well with you?
Well, I always wondered, if somebody calls out to something or calls out to somebody, how can you be that person?
You're asking, how could Jesus Christ be calling out to himself?
Correct. In another form. How could he be calling on to himself?
So even before you encountered the Church of Christ, the Iglesia Cristo, that in the past came to your mind, right? You were thinking about that. That's kind of different. Why is it that that teaching exists. You had questions about the belief concerning who Jesus Christ is, what many people believe.
Correct.
And then now here you are attending our Bible studies, and there was a lesson that touched that.
Correct.
Touched on the difference between Jesus Christ and the true God. And so that kind of caught your attention.
Well, correct, very much.
Then when you heard the teachings of God written in the Bible that we uphold in the Church of Christ about who Jesus Christ is and about who the true God is, what did that now do for you? Did it answer a lot of the questions you had?
It did. It answered a lot of questions. My main question was why, who is he? Who actually is Jesus Christ? Was he flesh and bones? Was he kind of an inanimate object? Or was he just kind of a floating spirit? What exactly was he? And it was plain and simple in black and white in the Bible. This is who he is. This is why we do this. And Brother Jeriel went ahead and showed it to me. And in black and white, you can't really argue with pen and paper. With black and white paper. It's right there.
All right. So what did that do for you? How did you feel when you saw someone, right, a religious group, actually give you the facts from the Bible that you'd never experienced before, you'd never received before? How did that make you feel?
It actually made me very curious. Like, what else can I ask? And then I kept thinking of questions to stump. I'm not gonna lie, it was a stumper. I wanted to
You wouldn't be the first one.
I wanted to stump people. That's what I wanted to do. And I asked all kinds of questions, and it was just, he had an answer for everything. And it wasn't, this is what we believe, but it's written here. It's written in black and white, and it's not a twist. You would read it in plain English, and it would be right there.
We'll see what else transpired in Brother David's life when we come back. Welcome back to One on One. We're here with Brother David Rivera. Brother David, let's talk about some things that were happening in your life at the time that you found the church. Because you were a musician, right?
Yes.
A lot of musicians don't live stellar lives.
Correct.
So tell us what your life was like, let's say right before you found the Church of Christ.
Well, my life consisted of playing gigs or playing at clubs, playing at different events, whatever I could do to make money. My job was I was a musician. I didn't have a regular job. That included playing at bars till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, showing up at home at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning from whatever I was doing. Most of the time I drank my pay. At the time I also was going to school. So school was all about college, and college has beer, and that's what we did. We had adult beverages is what we did, and my place was always right next to the keg. And it was just chaos. It was just everywhere. I was everywhere, but that was the life. That was the musician's life. You just show up.
Well, it's not only a musician's life, that's basically the way that many people live today, especially around that age.
Oh, correct, very much. And it was, we did a lot of flirting back and forth with the women. It was one here, at the next bar it was this one, at the next one, only because you knew they had money and you would put it in the jar and you would get more money at the end of the night.
Basically at this time then, religion really wasn't there. It wasn't something that you even felt you needed.
Exactly, it just wasn't anything I wasn't interested in. It was just kind of way back in the back of my mind that okay, I'll get to it later maybe.
And then here comes the Church of Christ to throw a wrench in your activities.
Yeah, just threw a big old wrench in it, and it was, what do I do now? Well, these are what you shouldn't be doing kind of stuff. You gotta be straight.
What did you think about that? When you're hearing things that God teaches by means of His words written in the Bible as to how you should live your life here on earth, which is quite different than the way people now live today. Because a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with God. They'd rather the pleasureful life, as they say, sinful pleasures, they call it.
Yes.
And there's some who just don't want to hear it. Kind of leave me alone. Let me live the way I want to live. Why do I need to follow someone who I can't even see? How is it that you were able to take hold of the teachings of God?
Well, at the time, I was having a lot of problems. I was having a lot of health problems. So when this came effect, as far as you should live your life like this, you shouldn't be doing this because this is not the way God wants you to live. And as I was having a hard time with my blood pressure at the time. And I was
that young.
Being that young. And I was drinking a lot, and it was every day I'd have my drinks, you know, and then I'd get sick, as far as I wouldn't feel good. I'd feel dizzy. My body just wasn't liking it, was rejecting it. And going into the church, they tell you should live your life like this, live your life like that. Well, I started to kind of ease off of it a little bit, and I started feeling better. And it was, well, if I'm starting to feel better, and then the church is saying this is what you shouldn't be doing, then why is it that they're telling me that? Then that means it's good for me. So if the church is telling me this is what you shouldn't be doing, or as far as asking you and what they're teaching you, it's making me feel better. So I just, continued on.
So you were seeing benefits in obeying God's commandments written in the Bible.
Correct,
Immediate
very much.
benefits to you in particular.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then eventually you decided to continue to listen. And after listening for a while, it led to something in your life that perhaps you never thought would happen. And let's take a look at what the teachings of God meant to Brother David and what it eventually led to in his life.
Moment after moment, David kept getting closer to walking through the most important set of doors in his life, one that promised him more than what he needed in this life.
The moment that I started to believe that this was a true church was pretty much during one of the worship services, when I realized while the preacher or the resident minister was preaching or giving the lesson, he was giving Bible verse after Bible verse. He would ask you a question, and then, well, here's the answer. And then he would go through the Bible and bring it out, and it would be right there in the Bible.
At the age of 26, David was baptized in the Church of Christ. Today, his relationship with music is still opening doors for him, but now in a form that gave him more than a good meal for the day.
Sometimes throughout the week or throughout the day, you're walking around and you get ready to go to church. You go to church and you're still thinking about all these things that's going through your day, and you sit down, and then a specific hymn comes up. You start singing and you start thinking, man, that's exactly what I'm feeling right now. That's a lot of what's going on in my life right now. Feels, good to be able to sing these songs or sing these hymns of praise.
Brother David, when did you feel and know that the church that was being presented to you was the real thing, that it was the true church? Because, of course, there is no religion or church that will tell people that they're not true and they're not real. But what was it about this church that set it apart from others that you had encountered throughout your life?
For me, it was having my questions answered. That was huge for me. I mean, that was made me feel good that people could actually answer my questions. Mm-hmm. That was huge, enormous for me. And everybody was so welcoming. It's like, brother, do you have any questions? They openly asked me if I had questions.
Why this one?
Well, this one just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just something inside me just went, stay, see what's going on, and just check it out, and if you didn't like it, just stick it out, and every time that I thought, it's not for me, I'm not digging it, not my deal. And it always came back. The resident minister was a musician. Why would he happen to be a musician? Why?
But there had to be things that you learned, from your studies in the Holy Scriptures that pinpointed that this is it, to solidify it for you. Because, of course, yes, it's a feeling. You have those feelings, something that feels right. But what was it? Was it everything put together? Or were there certain things that you heard, like, for example, we teach that there's only one true church, because remember, that was what turned you off in the beginning, right?
Exactly.
You were turned off because you heard a lesson that was teaching that there's only one church, a group of people that will be saved. And yeah, when people hear that, they're like, hey, wait a second, what about everybody else? So now, here you are listening to those teachings, which at first you didn't want to hear anything else about. So what was it that you heard that told you, all right, they are correct. This is the one and only true church. Were there the lessons that you received?
Yeah, there was actually one lesson. Me, myself, I'm a pretty big history buff. I like history. I don't understand why, but there was a certain lesson in our Bible lessons and it explained, you come from the east and it goes to the west. And okay, well, there's a lot of churches in the east. How far east? And they talk about far east. And as far as United States, we don't consider east. We consider far east is the Asian world. And they talk, and then it came to the west. And as you get through the lessons, they explain, okay, this church is over here, and Iglesia ni Cristo is over here. And okay, but how did it end up in Hawaii or in California? The far west, which is what we consider the far west. And he explained to us how it ended up coming on this side of the world. And you really can't argue with facts.
I got you.
Far west, far east, and it's amazing.
So you saw the prophecies that were written in the Bible long time ago fulfilled in the Church of Christ.
Correct.
And you can't deny the facts.
Exactly, can't deny it.
Yeah, I know, because a lot of people, I asked that question because, of course, it has to be something. It can't just be a feeling. Because people could just say, David, you just got weird feelings. Why you have those feelings? Have feelings about this religion or that religion. People have feelings about religion. But it has to be something more than just feelings. It has to be some kind of substance. And I wanted to know, what was it that really got you? Now, you've been attending worship services now. You're a member now. When were you baptized, by the way?
I was baptized October 31st of 2009.
Okay. And you've been attending worship services. And what does it feel like attending the worship services in the Church of Christ? And you've been to others because you played in some of those worship services. So what does it feel, what's the difference between a worship in the Church of Christ versus a worship being done in other churches?
The way it feels to me, you feel one. You feel one in the worship service because there's a lot of you, a lot of brethren together worshiping one God. In some of the places that I've been, there's been a lady behind me writing her bills, doing her bills. And you shouldn't be like that. You should be, in the service worshiping and doing the actual service, what needs to be done.
What does it mean to you in your life? I mean, you're going to the worship service after coming from work or whatever you've done with your day. What does it mean when you go in and then you sing the hymns and then you hear the words of God? What does that mean for you? How do you feel?
It makes me feel great. I mean, I go through the day on the church days that I'm at work, and it's just, okay, I'm ready to go to church. Let's go to church. I mean, no matter what happens throughout my day, I mean, no matter how bad the day could go at work, you always know that when it's time to go to church, everything, it goes away and all your cares are left there at the church. And you come out and you're completely ready to go for the next day and for the next week. It's just a great feeling to be able to empty out everything.
When we come back, see how his gift in music is making a difference in other people's lives. Don't go away. Welcome back to One-on-One. Earlier you saw how music was used for Brother David to find the Iglesia ni Cristo. Now let's see how he uses it to help others.
La, 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 la,
But more than opening doors for David, he's now using it to open doors for others.
Being able to use my gift of music to share my faith, music is what I do. Music is what I love. Music is also what I went to school for. That's kind of how I hear it. Especially, we praise your name, we serve you, Lord.
and it's allowing David to share his faith and love for music in many other ways.
I was assigned to help the kids actually practice for Singing for a Cause. It started off really roughly, really rough, but we got through it and we made it all the way to the end. We practiced and practiced and practiced, and when it came down to it, they were perfect. Looking back at my attitude before, where I never gave anything out for free. I always had to get paid for my services because I had to eat, which was, now that I was going out into the community and actually giving away my services to the elderly at nursing homes, was a very big change for me. Now that going back to what I believed at the time, I believed everybody would be able to get into heaven. Now that I know the truth, you actually have to earn it. It's just, I believe it, just like being a musician. In order for you to get paid that money, you have to put in hours and hours and hours and hours of practice time, day in and day out, just to play those couple of hours that you play a couple times a week, 4 or 5 times a week. So you have to earn that money, and you have to earn that right to be able to go into heaven.
All you got to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. You got a friend.
How do you compare your life now versus how it was before you found the church? You know, you basically lived for yourself before. How about now?
Now it's just not me. It's right now, as far as the way the church feels, it's not just me, not just living for myself anymore. I'm living for God is what I'm doing. How I feel is I'm living for God. My talent comes from Him, and I'm able to give it back, which makes me feel very good inside.
Mm-hmm. Are you sure that you're going the right way now?
Yes. I feel deep down inside that I am going the right way, as opposed to before, living day by day, gig to gig, drink to drink, meal to meal. Now I feel complete.
What would have happened to you had you not found the church? What do you believe? How would your life be right now if you hadn't found the church, especially the way you were going before?
Well, I believe the way my life would have ended up is I would just continue being the way I was. I would just be living from day to day.
So you were really going nowhere before?
I was just going in circles is what I was doing. 7 days a week, starting on Monday, going back again on Monday in the same circle.
Now your life has direction?
It has purpose.
It has purpose. Why would you say your life has purpose now?
Because I feel what I'm working for God now is I'm helping God reach other people, and by having music. Music is a universal language. Mm-hmm. No matter what race you are, it's universal. If you want to say something and you can't say it in English, say it with music. And if it's a sad song, you can tell that it's a sad song. If it's happy, you can tell just by being able to play it.
How about your family? You have your mom and dad are near you? They live near you?
Yes.
Have you been able to invite them to the church?
I have invited them to the church. My parents really haven't been able to make it yet, but they have gone to a couple of our activities. Mm-hmm. They went to our activities where we actually read to the kids as far as for literacy. Right. And they had a good time. It was great. They laughed. They were having a good time, and they actually were enjoying the fact that we were having so much fun with the kids. Mm-hmm. And we're talking 4 or 5 up to 10-year-olds.
So they were exposed.
They were exposed.
What do they think about your newfound faith?
The faith itself, they think it's great. My dad has always said, even though we never push church on you, I think it's good for you to be able to find a church that you like. And it completes you. Mm-hmm. It makes you feel good when you're able to find a church that actually makes you feel good or you want to be in that church. Even though he never really pushed it on me, he always wanted that for me.
Now, I assume you had a lot of friends before you joined the church, those who were your friends as musicians. And now that you're in the church, perhaps many of your friends are members of the Church of Christ. Do you still keep in contact with some of your other friends? And what do they feel about your faith? Because obviously you changed. You're not their drinking buddy anymore.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
how did that affect your relationship, and what do they think of you now?
Well, as far as now as a person, they like me as a person because I was kind of flaky. I'd show up to the gig 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes late. Gig started at 9, I'd show up at 9 or 10 o'clock. It was whatever, But now it's, if I do keep in contact with them, I still actually do play gigs with most of them. But they know that I don't play certain gigs. There's just certain places I just won't do. But I'm punctual. They ask me about my religion. I will tell them, why don't you come out, come check it out. We'll have a jam session. If you say jam session music, everybody comes running as far as my old musician friends. And they'll come out sometimes and, we'll throw down some music and have some fun with it. And, so that's, as far as that, I think they enjoy it.
Do they find it strange that before you became a member of the church, you really didn't have a part of religion? Religion wasn't even mentioned in your life, right? You guys didn't talk about that.
Oh, no, not at all.
And here it is now. It's like totally opposite. What do they think about that?
They think it's okay. I mean, most of them are Catholic. And that's how I got into knowing them, is because we played at the Catholic churches. We had our little tour of the Catholic churches. So they're okay with it, but they were kind of tough with me having to try to bring them over to a new faith. That was what it was, kind of pins and needles with us, kind of not rubbing the wrong way. So
if you knew that you had a limited time, well, we all have limited time to live here on this earth. Let's give it a year, right? You knew that's all the time you had left. You're in the Church of Christ. What would be the most important thing that you could tell, for example, your parents, your brother, your close friends, those people who are something special to you? What would you tell them about the Church of Christ?
I would tell them straight that actually the Church of Christ is the church you need to be a member of. That is the church, that the only one true church that is the gateway or the foot in the door to get into heaven. That's the way you're going to get in. And of course, with all the works that you do for the church, but the way you get your foot in the door is to be a part of the church, of the member of Iglesia ni Cristo.
Well, Brother David, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with all of us, especially our viewers, your life story.
Thank you very much.
As you listen to Brother David's story, perhaps it reminded you of someone you know, or maybe even your own story. With so many choices of churches out there, it's easy to get confused. But keep in mind that although there are tons of religions and churches out there in the world, but if you want the truth, there is only one. The only true church built by our Lord Jesus Christ, the Church of Christ, or Iglesia ni Cristo. For more information about the Iglesia ni Cristo or Church of Christ nearest you, write us at 101 1655 Southgate Avenue, Daly City, California, 94015. Or email us at oneonone@inctvprod.net. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brother Barry Thompson. See you again next time. God bless.